of the Raza Foundation and the India Habitat Center, we welcome you to the inaugural lecture in a new memorial series that we are starting from today, Jangarh Singh Shyam Memorial Lecture. As you know, Jangarh Singh Shyam has appeared on the scene as a major tribal artist, and there are some in this audience who have had the good fortune of having known him and met him. This story is well known, so I won't go into it. And in any case, maybe Jyotindra will tell you something more about it. We have 8 annual memorial lectures. They are devoted to Manikal, cinema, Agge, literature, Habib Tanveer, theatre, Kumar Gandharv, music, Charles Correa, architecture, Kelucharan Mahapatra, dance, Gaitonde, visual arts. And this is the edition now which will deal with the so-called tribal folk arts. And nobody better could have been there than Jyotindra Jain to give us the inaugural lecture in the series. Jyotindra Jain has been the senior director of the National Handicrafts Museum. In fact, Handicrafts Museum became a place to visit only when he was there. He has been founder, professor and dean of the School of Arts and Aesthetics in Jawaharlal Nehru University and member secretary of the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts. He has been a visiting professor at Harvard University, Leicester University, Humboldt University, and a Getty Distinguished Professor at JNU. Some of his publications include Ganga Devi, Tradition and Expression in Mithila Painting, Other Masters, 5 Contemporary Folk and Tribal Artists of India, Kalighat Painting, Images from a Changing World, and Jangarh Singh Shyam, A Conjurer's Archives. His work on contemporary Indian folk and tribal arts, as well as Indian popular arts, is considered pioneering. So he has received Prince Claus Award for Culture of the Netherlands and the Cross of the Order of Merit of the Federal Republic of Germany. He is also a fellow of the Asiatic Society of Bombay. He has not been keeping too well, and therefore, although he prefers to speak standing, he might, if he feels that he should sit down now, he may sit down. So you may have the lecture in 2 parts in terms of gestures.
As Ashokji said, I was unwell, very unwell, some 8-10 days ago, and I was planning to postpone the lecture, and all my life I've been talking standing, and therefore, though I'm tempted to sit down, but I will try and speak standing because I speak better when I stand and talk. So I'm very honored that you have invited me to deliver the first Jangarh Singh Shyam Memorial Lecture. Can you hear me all? Yes. Yeah. Jangarh Singh Shyam Memorial Lecture. I wrote a book, as Ashokji said just now, on him, and working with him over the book, really 5 years or so. He used to come to Delhi, come to my house. We used to chat, and I had very close relationship with him. And also, I must not forget that when he committed suicide in Japan, before that he wrote, he was very upset, and I don't want to go into that, nor do I want to focus on that, but he wrote 2 letters to his wife because he was stuck there and he wanted to come back. And the Japanese wanted to hold him because his paintings were selling at very high price. So those 2 letters are published in my book. In Hindi he wrote. And in the last letter, which was very moving for me, was that he wrote that, please get me out from here. Please ask Dr. Jain to help. He can speak to the director of the museum in Japan so that I can come back to India. But since the letter came by air mail, so each letter took about 7-8 days. And by the time the letter reached, he had already committed suicide by hanging himself. Now, except that I don't want to talk about that because it's not an issue that I have to, that's not the focus of the work. But the focus is Jangarh's own extraordinary talent and the kind of background he came from and how, so that's the theme, there's the mediations and things like that. So my initial introduction I read out and then we talk about. So let me start by complimenting the Raza Foundation and Sri Ashok Vajpayee for establishing the Jangarh Singh Shyam Memorial Lecture. The idea of recognizing and celebrating the pioneering folk and tribal artists on the same platform as the famed modern and contemporary artists was at the basis of the concept of Bharat Bhavan, jointly conceived by artists Jagdish Swaminathan and Sri Ashok Vajpayee. There could be critical issues in this regard, contemporary modernity, folk and tribal artists and modernity, could be critical issues in this regard which would need a separate inquiry, but today is not the occasion for that. So I will use the term contemporary and modern not in a way, because there is a whole debate that I don't intend to go into just now. Jangarh was a phenomenal artist, not coming from a fixed and founded tradition of painting, but became a founder of a tradition. Now, founder of a tradition now falsely called Gond painting, as neither the Gonds nor the Pradhan, he was a Pradhan, he belonged to Pradhan tribe, neither the Gonds nor the Pradhans have had any such tradition of painting at all, not even a little bit. They were doing clay relief work, his mother and all, but there was no tradition of painting, So, he came to Bhopal because I think Bharat Bhavan was sending out teams to locate artists, folk and tribal artists. So the team found him because he had done a drawing of Hanuman on a temple, white temple wall, and somebody asked who is the artist, and they found him. They asked him if he would like to come to Bhopal, so he came. So and later on he sort of grew up as artist in Bharat Bhavan. When he came, he wasn't doing any prolific work or something like that. So he came and there, so he sort of grew up there, and then his life ended also in another museum. Now Gond and Pradhan, I want to comment on this because everyone talk about he was a Gond artist. He wasn't a Gond artist at all. There's a whole book by Verrier Alvin and Shamra Hivale, and the book is about Pradhans of Upper Narmada Valley. He has clarified, and I've gone through from 1911 census onwards, that they were not Gond. Gonds were upper, and there was no instance of Pradhan boys or girls marrying into Gonds. But because by some misunderstanding, and now the galleries and museums, and because there's a big market about it, they don't want to change the nomenclature. He was a Pradhan artist. And now as a compromise term, they say Pradhan Gond artist or things like that. So let's also not go. I've elaborated upon this in my book on Jangarh Singh Shyam, A Conjurer's Archive. So, because one thing in anthropologists, and I'm an anthropologist, one thing to judge about a community is whether they intermarry. Pathans and Gond never intermarried. In fact, Pathans who were musicians, they were bards of Gond Rajas. You heard about Gondwana and things like that. They were sitting outside in the entrance courtyard rather than entering. So within the tribes, there was also a kind of hierarchy. So Jangarh was a phenomenal artist, not coming from fixed and founded tradition of painting, but became a founder of a tradition now falsely called Gond painting. And neither the Gond nor the Pradhans have had any such tradition of painting. It was Jangarh whose individual painterly idiom, which Udayan Bajpayee aptly describes as Jangarh Kalam. So before that there was no Pradhan Kalam or Gond Kalam or anything at all. But market took over before any critical intellectual infrastructure was put into place. The market is like, and the galleries of course, which is also market. Udayan describes it Jangarh Kalam. Now, though the word kalam is used for miniature painting, but we are not taking in literal sense. And what he says is right. It started with Jangarh, and I've all in my book talked at length about it. Led to the emergence of the so-called Gond painting, now proliferating in the art establishment. I pay my tribute to Jangarh. It's the first Jangarh memorial lecture that I'm doing, and on whom I wrote a book, and I had curated a huge retrospective of Jangarh Singh Shyam's work at Kiran Museum a couple of years ago. The Jangarh Singh Shyam memorial lectures are not, and Ashokji wrote to me, that they are not lectures not necessarily meant to confine to Jangarh's work. It's not about Jangarh. These lectures, Ashokji had told me, these Jangarh's work, but relate to the broad spectrum of Indian folk and tribal art, and hence the title Entangled Objects, Mediatory Processes in the Vernacular Arts of India. Within a given limited period of time, whatever I can do to justify my title and the issues involved, I will bring as many examples as possible, what one can do in such a brief time. I have borrowed the phrase entangled objects, I love it, from the title of a book by Nicholas Thomas, which I thankfully acknowledge. Under the broad framework of mediatory processes, I shall discuss the effect of 4 or 5 modern interventions or mediations, which vastly expanded the field of expression of some of the vernacular artists coming from strongly traditional-bound societies. So they come from tradition-bound societies, they are rooted, and anthropology was early anthropology was a big culprit, looking for authenticity and rootedness and all that. But as the times are changing, still many anthropologists were looking for that authenticity and all. So the reflection on the contemporary environment of an artist, these mediations I'm going to talk about, and there were also other mediations even before, some kind of pre-modern mediations, Bhagatization movement and against the Christian, converting the tribals to Hinduism, and those were also other kind of mediations. Now these mediations, I will include a few. Arrival of paper, transition from the iconic to the narrative. All tribal traditions were iconic, they were symbolic thing, wall painting, they were on the wall. When paper came, suddenly things changed. They didn't have to confine to ritual iconographies, they didn't have to confine to that space. Paper, white, empty paper in front of an artist sort of charged the imagination of all of them. And when I show you examples, you'll wonder, it's purely the space of that paper which has sort of, and shift to narrative from symbolic elements in Madhubani painting or in Warli painting or thing, and then coming off paper that, they turn to, and all of them, everywhere in India, the traditional folk or tribal artists turn to narrative, which is interesting, So what were they narrating? Their own inherited mythology and stories, So that will come to when I talk about that mediation. Another is the museum effect, because the artists entered the museum space, and when they entered that space, they begin to work in a way addressed to the museum. But it's not, I'm talking in a commercial sense, but the recognition, the larger space, exhibition, this also had impact on their thinking. So the museum effect, vernacular artists entering the formal art space. Third is response to power imbalances in the works of vernacular artists. That's the crux of my lecture today, that tribals were suffering at the hand of landlords, police, bribing, and the whole Naxal movement that came up in many parts of eastern India. That was slowly, the exploitation was entering as a mediation in the work. And that, I think, is extremely important. I show you examples, you'll wonder, we have never touched upon all this, we've never thought of this, we were looking for aesthetic, we were looking for, tradition, this, that, wonderful patronizing tribal art. And then there was so much that was happening in terms of responding to police atrocities, administration, things like that. So I'll show you some examples of that. And then lastly, I will take as a mediation, mediagenic echoes in the vernacular art, the media coming to them, and how they respond to this media and how media is looked at by it. So these are a few examples that I take. But before I elaborate on these, let me briefly take up the issue of tribal identity and the tribal art in India. So, like, what is tribal art in India? All over the world, like Australian Aboriginal art, or in various African countries, African Aboriginal or African tribal art, so to say, these were created by the tribals themselves. Whereas in India, what we call tribal art was rarely, except a few things of basketry and things like that, occasionally some little bit scribbling on the wall. All tribal art, what we call tribal bronzes, and this is not created by the tribals. The authors were others. So there were Hindu metal casters, Hindu carpenters, Hindu, people who were terracotta, Hindu potters. All the, what we call tribal terracotta, were actually made by Hindu potters. And what happened? It's not ending at that, okay, Hindus were working. Along with that, the Hindus brought in Hinduism into, and this is a process very remarkable, nobody writes about it. But say, votive terracottas, offering of horses and things like that. Now all this was coming from Hindu potters. So tribals had no iconography, no particularly human forms as such. If at all, then some scribbling on the wall thing. But actually, tribal bronzes, the tribal bronzes they were given this iconography from the Hindus, and therefore tribal bronzes often had Hindu deities or at least some features of Hindu. This direction we have not explored, so I hope to do that a little bit today. Yeah, the first slide, please. Yeah. Tribal identities, colonial essentialization. We'll start from that and go into what happened after that. Who are the tribals? What is a tribal art? What is tribal art, and made by whom? It's interesting that how tribals were essentialized already in colonial period, and therefore on your left side you see those dioramas. These are dioramas in Indian Museum in Calcutta. Once, I think about 8-10 years ago, Jyotindra Singh, the photographer, and myself, we strayed into the Indian Museum. She was very keen to photograph Indian Museum, frozen object, museum, museumizing, all those issues. So we both went just without any plan, and then we saw these fantastic dioramas over there. So nearly about 80-90 years ago, the tribals entered these large dioramas that were as big as, that screen, and up to here and broader, with landscape inside and tribal. So if you see, so they were, they entered the dioramas. And when we were photographing, a school teacher came along with children and said, "Children, these are our tribals." So everyone, looked at it, and the teachers were saying, so tribals were always sort of, women were going bare-chested, people were smoking, whatever, kind of, they were essentialized. So one stood for the whole community. So that is what the tribal identity was. And then in the British period, innumerable volumes are published under the heading Tribes and Castes of India, Tribes and Castes of India. And each one was essentializing that one stood for the, and that is very good example. On the right side you see that it was Lord Canning, the last Viceroy of India as far as I know. And in 1868, he published 8 volumes. Yeah, thank you. He published 8 volumes on people of India, and original photographic prints were pasted in that of the people. Now, Christopher Pinney, many people have done analysis, and I have done my own, but these 2 examples I'm showing are from the well-known photo historian, Christopher Pinney. Now, Pinney has extraordinarily analyzed these images. The left one here is a man who belonged to Gujar community. Now, they were described in the book because this was patronized, the book was patronized by Lord Canning, the Viceroy. So the Gujars were described as ferocious people, these, that, everything bad that could be said, and holding a lathi in his hand with the iron rings and things like that. And that means he was malign. And the last line in the paragraph said, and they were the people who prominently participated in the mutiny of 1857. So that says everything about that description. On the other side, the description praises these people, the family values, the woman being present, and they are described as nice people. They were sort of cooperating and things like that. So how photographs are made and read, So these were very important things. And identities, and we're talking of identities of tribals as such. So, and then British period, very interesting thing happened to tribals, and that is their land forest rights came under surveillance. And that would mean that they could not collect forest products, and they were not agriculturists then. Agriculture slowly came to them. So when they were not farming, they were on the verge of dying. And therefore they began to plunder the nearby villages. And as they began to do that, the British government came up with a law called Criminal Tribes Act of 1824. 1924. So they turned to, but Criminal Tribes Act was kind of, highly punishable. But what would they do? They didn't have anything to live on. They didn't know agriculture, and they were not craftspeople either. So they began to. So all this wasn't considered at all. And so these are some of the histories of tribal identities we have to know. Now it's nearly 75, 80 years after our independence, and so much is being written. But before, as I said, any intellectual infrastructure was based. Tribal art became part of gallery, market, this, that, but nobody is going into who are the tribal, what is tribal art and things. So some of the examples I'll bring in this talk today. Next, please. Yeah. Now, just 2 pictures of Jangarh, tribal identity. The left picture, I was curating an exhibition called Other Masters, a little bit ironically titled then, many years ago, Other Masters. So I took 5 folk and tribal artists and I did an exhibition, a smaller one in Crafts Museum, and later on, 10 years later, I traveled to Paris with much larger version. And so when I was doing this other master's at Crafts Museum, Jangarh was one of the 5. So I called him to my room. That time I worked at Crafts Museum, and I said, Jangarh, get ready. You have to get photographed yourself. The photographer is waiting outside, and get yourself, So for the catalog, I said. Then Jangarh says, I hope you know Hindi. Saab, kapde khol do. Should I shed my clothes? He said, I wonder why he talked like that. Then he told me that a gallery a year ago in Delhi had asked him that he should change over to tribal, because if he's not tribal, his art is not tribal, it won't sell. So he said that he was asked to. So the photograph on the right is Gallery Shah Jahan 1997 in Delhi, and my exhibition was in 98. So I was again talking about fixing identities and shifting identities and living between identities and tribals and things like that. Then next please. Yeah. Now Indian tribals in the Republic Day parade. That is another very interesting thing, because nationally constituted identity of tribals. Now here it's very interesting that there was a man called Govind Vidyarthi. Do you know him? Yeah. Govind Vidyarthi worked at Lalit Kala Sangeet Natak Academy, and he used to publish occasionally articles, the journal of Sangeet Natak. And he wrote an article called Republic Day Folk Dance Festival in the issue April-June 1969. He wrote an article. And he talks about how tribal identities were constituted. Before I come to interventions and all, which is the main theme of my talk today, I quote him, with more and more urban people presenting folk dances, there has been an increasing tendency to include pretty college girls. This is what he's writing, and these, you can see them. Pretty college girls, usually a dance director, choreographer accompanied them, and one could see hectic rehearsals for the creation of a folk dance. So this is what Republic Day parade and Republic dances were constituted. The costumes, the clothing, everything was provided by government-run agencies. These urban folk dances are a feast for the camera, and they hit the headlines in the press. So this was like a time, and it continues even till today. Don't worry about it. So this, my theme now is the. Okay. So talking about tribal identities, and now next please. Okay. Now tribal art, pre-modern mediations. Horse. You can see here in all 3 images, horse coming there. Now these are all tribal art things, so to say. On the left side are horses as votive offerings brought to the dead, the shrine under a tree, and terracotta. Now horse is, I'm talking about pre-modern mediations. So horse was a majorly Rajput kind of thing, and tribal even like Gujarat and Rajasthan and Dungarpur, Banswara, they were all princely families, and Panchmal district and all in Gujarat and all. So this comes from North Gujarat. So Hindu potters were creating these objects, and it was tribals were buying them. They didn't have any. What did they have to do with horse? And this became such a thing that even in Tamil Nadu, for example, on the top right here, these are Tamil Nadu horses, larger than life size, and these were also the Nayaka dynasty people. They began to even import, in imitation of North Indian and Middle Indian kingdoms, horses, and all horses died because in that climate they did not survive much, So, but that became established because of the influence. These are various dimensions I want to talk about when we talk about tribal art in India, and not just saying, oh, how beautiful or whatever. That also perhaps. So, these are INR horses on the right side. Left side you can already see Poshina, North Gujarat. And then there are these paintings, Pithora paintings in Gujarat and also in Madhya Pradesh, in Alirajpur area and Chota Udaipur area in Gujarat. Now this is the creation myth of the Rathwa tribe in Gujarat and Bhilalas in Madhya Pradesh, the same tribe. And thing. Now here, originally they used to only put 4 or 5 vermilion dots. And they did not know a horse, they never had a horse, but they used to see the Dashera festival was very important in this whole region. So the Maharaja's Dashera festival and the Dashera parade would happen. And looking at that, they took it over from them and started to interpret their creation myth in terms of Dashera festival. Now, I think these are many such factors I understand, and I would like to say that if we work on tribal art, we have to get into some of these things, and we can't just simply be collecting and thinking and all. Nothing of this sort has been done in India, and even today it's still possible to do that. These horses painted, they are painted by tribal. Those are made by Hindu potters. Now tribals couldn't paint horses, so what they do was that they go to a carpenter and get a stencil cut in the form of the body of the horse. So these all bodies are same and stenciled, and only legs are added and things. So how they imbibe the horse, and many of them, their surname or names always say Singh, Al Singh Rathwa, this Rathwa. So this is also Rajputization. They could not Brahmanize. First of all, they could get beaten if they did, but more than that, they were Rajputized also because of food habits and things like that. So all of them, many of them call themselves Singh, So this Rajputization process needs to be explored much more beyond art thing as such. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah. Now we are talking of tribal art, pre-modern mediations. On top, you see, in the middle, there is the image of this goddess Lakshmi. Now this is a tribal bronze. They are used by the tribals. But how does Lakshmi come there? I tell you why. Because tribals never did any metal casting themselves. So the outsiders who did metal casting, they brought in Hindu casters brought, So entire process of Hinduization over 150 years has a lot to do that they provided them with their gods, they provided them with their mythology and, things. So it has a socio-political dimension, and within that we have to see the interventions, which is my theme today. Now, very interesting is that one, a door in Warli area. Yashodhara, when you went there, it wasn't happening perhaps, but Yashodhara has done such a wonderful book on Warli painting. So this door was next to Jivia's house, exactly next to Jivia's house. And here you can see that these Bhagat, they were Bhagats. Now this Bhagatization movement, nobody has talked about it, huge movement. Historically, chronologically, not before RSS, but independently of RSS, they were moving around, and particularly against Christianization. So they went with a thela bag and iron stencils, cut-out stencils, and they just, on the door of the house, they put the stencil, put a color, and you see all on upper panel, Hindu gods and things were put there. Now this Bhagatization movement is very interesting, that Bhagats were people who took vows and became Bhagat, meaning they would not drink alcohol and they would not eat meat. And those who said yes, the door was done like that, and meaning from outside that these tribals have become Bhagats. When I was working in Gujarat on the buffalo sacrifice and thing, I found very interesting things over there, that there were two huts belonging to two brothers. Now there was one buffalo sacrifice happening in one brother's house. So the other brother, they were holding a curtain, a chadar kind of holding between the two houses. Not only that, but the bhagat, the people will become bhagat. They would on that occasion not, because the other one would slaughter a buffalo, drink the blood and thing. The other brother would become bhagat. He would make a buffalo of wheat flour, and with knife just cut the small buffalo, cut the thing and drink ghee, whereas the others would drink blood. Now these are various kind of processes, and this was connected with textiles related to mother goddesses in Gujarat. Very elaborate block printed, hand printed textiles. So these are various things, and then here, for example, in Karnataka, in Udupi area, there is a whole cult of Nandikeshwar. Shrines dedicated to Shiva's Nandi bull rather than Shiva himself. It's a very popular cult over there. Again, then, so now this was a kind of introduction. Now I come directly to modern intervention. Next, please. Okay. Now, modern interventions. First, we look at coming of paper. Arrival of paper, transition from the iconic to the narrative. I'm talking of Madhubani and particularly Ganga Devi, extraordinary artist of Madhubani. So on the right here you see originally the wall painting, very old. What they do today is very much influenced by various things, but this is like Mary Lanius from Denver. She gave me this slide 25 years ago, and this is a wall painting showing Kobar Ghar, which is a room where marriage is solemnized and marriage is consummated in the room. So there used to be, that was the basic tradition they had. From that, when paper came, there was a so when paper came, suddenly the imagination of, as I said in the beginning, was fired by the artists. They were not necessarily confining to this kind of ritual iconography, but they began to do narratives. So whether it's Warli area, whether it's Madhubani area, whether any other area, the paper, so for example, brought narrative devices and narration of their own stories, either their regional Ramayana or Mahabharata or whatever, or even their life stories, like Ganga Devi illustrated her own life story too. So this I think is very interesting. Now for example, left side below you see Ravana's chariot is on top, and there is a branch going like that, and that is not to be seen. Like in Sanskrit drama it would be apavarita, meaning not seen by these people. And then Ram, Lakshman and Sita. So Ram goes to see, Ram and Lakshman go and see the deer, and Ravana has arrived in the form of a mendicant and to kidnap Sita. And so, these devices of narration, dealing with time and space, or casting time into space, these were not their part, like in that, These devices came with the coming of paper, and the kind of thing that they were able to do, explore this is unimaginable. Here, for example, there's palm tree, and this is related to fight between Bali and Sugriva, and they put that palm tree here. And then Ram and Lakshman, because Bali and Sugriva were fighting, so Ram and Lakshman are there, but they are not supposed to know. Now this Apavarita Sanskrit also somehow or the other found by them to deal with the, so this is all coming of paper and as an intervention. Next please. This is an extraordinary painting by Ganga Devi, which she did over 4 years. It is about 150 so 1.5 meters broad and 3.5 meters long. And this is the story of a paper, cycle of life, what she called Manav Jivan, she used to call it, the painting. And then right from birth on the top left corner, you see a woman is, she's 14 years old, she has attained puberty, she's being given bath by her sister or mother, and then she becomes pregnant. It goes on telling the story of her life. In next panel, there is the woman is lying on the floor. She's pregnant with a child. You can see the child, and the child, Ganga Devi said, is withfolded and says, "Oh God, liberate me from this hell." So it goes on. But very interesting is that the one next to that, the woman is seated and the child is already born, and is born on fresh bamboo leaves. These are all cultural details of that community which never was in painting before. So this, and then you see there are two birds between those two figures, which are like two birds. Now these come from the wall painting. So they use the vocabulary of the wall painting also, and then at the same time so whole thing goes on. The boy grows up, the girl grows up, he takes occupation, fishing, etc. and like that. And towards the end here, the girl, their children get married, and marriage takes place and goes back to that. So the cycle of life continues. But all the rituals and sanskaras through which the people have to go through in Mithila, all these things she has done. This painting took her 3 to 4 years, and she was very meticulous, and she produced very less. Next, please. Then, that detail I was telling you about the mother, and here, as I said, Ganga Devi is between two figures. There is the two birds and all that. Everywhere she is. You see on the top figure where the child is saying, you see a bunch of mangoes that the woman is holding, and Ambika, the Hindu goddess, has connection with Ambika, mango, and she, in sculptures, Ambika is always shown as the goddess holding a bunch of mangoes in Ellora and many places, and this somehow comes into it from the local belief. So local belief, classical sculptures, they are kind of relationship. And then on the right side, on top, she went to America when Festival of India took place in America, and many Indian artists and craftspersons were sent to America, and she also was sent over there. Everyone came up with what was that time very known as 2-in-1, meaning radio and tape recorder. Everyone came with that, a lot of American things. Ganga Devi came back with nothing. She just, because we received them at 2 o'clock at night, because craftsmen was sending them, so it was our job to pick them up and think. So we went there and she came up with nothing. But 6 months later, she produced 3 paintings of her visit to America, the visit to Washington Monument. So there you can see the monument in the middle, then she herself, first time an artist appears in the painting herself. So she's in the lift to climb the Washington Monument, and there are, and about left side, bottom left in that painting, there's a hand coming and giving a ticket. So she was buying a ticket to go up, and then she told me that in America you do not see human beings. A hand comes and gives you a ticket, a hand takes the money and things. So this registered in her mind, and sort of she did this. And here, then she contracted cancer. And when she had cancer, she was undergoing treatment of cancer and all that. So she's here painting because she was undergoing chemotherapy. And she once came, I was in craft museum still then. She came and told me that I am suffering so much and I want to engage myself with something. So I said, so she said, get me some paper. So I got her sheets of paper, and then she did 4 paintings related to her cancer experience and things like that, which therefore I'm talking about these interventions which became possible because of the coming of paper, but not only mythology or things, but also personal agonies and a reflection of that. I think that we need in our times to look at folk and tribal art from these various perspectives and cultural and individual, particularly emergence of individual work, Unfortunately, because of the gallery systems and things, and market, as I said, took over before any critical infrastructure happened. As a result, what happened was that the artists, started to produce a lot. So traditional art was being collected by museum, authentic and all. But then finally mass production began because where do you purge this art? Museums, for example, the Crafts Museum comes under that. Ministry of Textiles, which was a part of Ministry of Commerce, and before they were part of Industry Ministry, immediately after. So they began, their job was to earn foreign exchange. So all folk art was put into the category of craft. And then all of them, Ganga Devi did this painting in Craft Museum as craft. She was paid as craft person. She got a national award as a craft person. So this led to, next please, this led to mass production and things like that. But the beginners, the early first generation artists with paper, they were something different, like Jangarh or Jivya Suma Mashe or Ganga Devi and Boba Devi and Chandrakala Devi and all of them. Their first generation paper artists, their work is very different. Then came churning, the market took over. Now here I'll talk about another artist like Jivya, who Jivya Suma Mashe, very well. I mentioned Yashodra's book and thing. Now these people, Jivya, original tradition was as on the left side. Maybe that image is from Yashodra, your book. So that is that, like I showed you in Kobar painting, that they were iconographic and thing, and in wall painting. That was the only thing they had. Now when paper came, they started again narrative. It's very interesting for me, that turning to narrating, telling their own story and exploring narrative devices. So on top there is a story, on top left corner, for example, the tribal, they had prepared a feast for the god to come, but the god didn't come because appear, and then they waited and then they went to take baths in a pond and things like that. And here there is a story of two thieves who wanted to kill a farmer, and the farmer said, "Yeah, you kill me, but just before that I give you a riddle to solve." And so by the time they solved, it became morning, and therefore they disappeared, or things like that. But again, this turning to narrative. But coming to contemporary influences, like in Ganga Devi we saw. Next, please. Now this is an extraordinary painting that Jivya did.
Which year?
Which year? This is, I tell you, I was still at Crafts Museum. No, and it was in other masters, my exhibition, and therefore, do you remember the date? 98. So it was that period, and this was shown in that. So this was large 8 feet by 8 feet painting, and this was on a board. Now it's very interesting what Jivya said. At that time I had to go to Chennai for some meeting, and he had asked me for a board, and I gave him, and he was working on it and all. When I came back after a week or so, I found Jivya had begun to do this painting, and it's very interesting that Jivya, as you know, spoke very little. He answered monosyllabic, so he wouldn't describe much. But also the reason was that perhaps language, and because I spoke Marathi quite well, understood well, so I was able to talk to him, and he told me that he had a memory of great-grandfather or whatever in the village, even much beyond great-grandfather. There was a, Bombay-Delhi railway line passes that area, Wali area, and so the railway line was created, and that was in the village. There was a talk always about that. So railway line cannot go meanderingly; it has to go straight, and therefore ruthlessly, he said, it cut the village into two halves. So the upper half, you can see people and things and village life and all that, and village is that side, and the fields are always in every area. Fields are a little away from the village, outside. So these are the fields, and this railway line cutting the village, whereas the rivulet is going below. Now, this kind of things could happen only with the coming of paper, and this is a board, but it's the same thing, So these interventions had brought about changes. Now, next, please. Yeah, the museum effect. We talked about paper. There's amount that one can talk about paper, but I think, I'm not making an encyclopedia. I'm just talking about a few things. Now, the museum effect, vernacular artists emerging, entering the art space, the formal art space. Now, there was this lady called Sonabai. She is so well known in Bhopal because both Manav Sangrahalaya and Bharat Bhavan have done work with her, and she used to come to the museum. Like paper, entry to the formal art space brought them money, brought them prestige, and the space, as I talked about white space, same thing, space of the museum inspired them. This clay relief work originally was done only on very small scale. They used to make a niche in a wall, ala or something, in which leftover rotis or vegetables or something could be put in terracotta pot, and that was a bit decorated. That was the only tradition they had. But when they entered the space of museum, they realized the scope, and of course they got money, they got prestige, and I think everything combined. But then they expanded. One other thing they did was grain storage jars in their house. And then here Sonabai, one of the artists, did in the National Museum of Man in Bhopal. She made a larger jar and more decoration and things like that, and all around, because a space was available to her. So she did other narrative things, and this is extraordinarily beautiful, coming from the imagination, but the scope that came. And these contemporary or modern interventions sort of completely changed the thing, changed the way of working and looking at things. On top, left completely, this Sonabai seated outside her house, and these screens that she used to make were bamboo rings, and then she would cover with clay, and then put these rings one upon the other and make very beautiful screens. And a team from Bharat Bhavan went to collect art, and so they also found Sonabai's house. Sonabai was the only one that time they were well-to-do. Her husband was always busy with land and record and money and thing. And Sonabai was alone at home. She didn't have a child that time. So she would engage herself with doing this. And often her husband would say, "You are constantly, can you eat clay?" And she said, "It's not your business, I will eat clay." And then she would make such elaborate things in her house. That was the only place where she did this before she went out. And so I had called her for other masters to Crafts Museum, and the one that you see with two goats and Krishna and Gopi, that was at Crafts Museum on a wall she had done. Krishna is, of course, wearing of united colors of Benetton and colorful things and all these things percolate into that. And here, for example, a village scene or karma tree, karma festivals, or the dance around karma tree and things. So village themes and other themes and things contributed, but became so amazingly, it was these interventions which gave such scope to them, But unfortunately, again, because the gallery and the demand and all that, everyone started to copy everyone, and just lifeless thing began. But the first generation artists, also in Madhubani, Ganga Devi, Bawa Devi, Chandrakala Devi, first generation 7 women, their work is very different than now what you get Madhubani in Delhi Heart, on the pavements and all. Big difference in the work that that you see. Then okay, then next please. Okay, here there was another artist called Sundari Bai. All these were discoveries of Madhya Pradesh. Was the center of finding people and all, and then so Sundari Bai was also doing that. So what she's making here is a grain storage jar, but an enlarged work, and it becomes an artwork in the sense that because now she's working in an art space, and what she's doing turns into art. But even so, it is still deriving from that in very beautiful work. And this panel on the right side, you see this whole architectural thing. She went to Paris when I took a larger version of other masters to Paris, which was reviewed in 40 European newspapers and journals, and they were all amazed by this exhibition, which took place at Musée du Quai Branly in Paris, Musée du Quai Branly Chirac, which is a museum, one of the largest European museums of folk and tribal arts. And there, Sundari Bai created, talking about museum space, so she's created this whole work with jalis and things and images and things like that. So that is another intervention that is there. Next, please, Jangarh. Jangarh Singh Shyam. You can see on the left side that big avian he created in, I think on the dome of Bharat Bhavan or somewhere in Bharat Bhavan this is, So, and so he is seated there. I like so much of his laborer image. Was not trying to act as in his image as artist, but worker. So he was doing in the entire sitting, looking at his own work, and so Jangarh was also a Bharat Bhavan team, which around they found Jangarh, and I told you already the beginning. But look at what he did early. One of his early works in Bharat Bhavan now. Right side here is my most favorite painting that Jangarh did. Now, there is a Mahabharata is not one. One is like the constituted edition of Mahabharata, but there are thousands of Mahabharata, as we know. There are thousands of Ramayana in the country. So Pandwani tradition. Pandwani is the story of Pandavas. No? The Pandwani tradition in Madhya Pradesh is very musical. A lot of narrations are there. So Jangarh, in one of his early works, he did this painting, and it was very amazing that, anyway, you see the cows over there, and one cow having intercourse. Next to that, Shiva and Parvati, can you see? I don't have the thing to show, but do you see Shiva and Parvati in one of? So first of all, see the windows that he has, narrative devices. So he wanted to tell some story related to Pandwani or local Mahabharata. So here you see Shiva and Parvati. Then Parvati goes for a walk. Then when she goes for a walk, she sees 4 or 5 cows and one bull, and bull having intercourse with these cows. Which, looking at that, Parvati laughed. So one of the cow said, "Don't laugh, next birth you will be born as Draupadi. You will be born as Draupadi." And then on that performance-like thing, there are these 5 Pandavas and Draupadi. Then before that, there is the Shravana story and the carrying parents and all that. But Dashrath is shown over there, and there's an eye. And he says there was an eye always watching everything that happened, the floating eye. So that was done. And also, I find this extremely interesting because the way he has divided the space is totally amazing for me, because he wanted to tell the story. And then also field-like feeling, as if some crops or whatever, but abstraction of that. Extraordinary painting that Jangarh did very early in his life. Next, please. Yeah, these are a few Jangarh paintings which I will quickly show. The museum effect, vernacular art in art space. Left side 2 paintings are of the serpent Shesha holding the earth. But in all other painting, in the so-called classical painting as well as sculpture, you find the earth is always shown as some kind of, earth people. Here, the field and the nature and the forest are shown as earth. For him, that was the earth and thing. And then Jangarh, it became very known and used to go to, was invited to many countries and things. So when he went abroad, once I think it was in Paris, where he was invited to participation in the major and extremely important, somewhat controversial exhibition called Mediations of the Earth, and Jangarh was there. And there he bought, if you remember, there is a German pen called Roth Ring with black ink and your thing. Jangarh told me that he bought this pen, and then he would on a paper, he would just hold the pen like this and like this, like that. So from graded line would come where you press and then many graded lines are put together. Then very luminous effect would come, like see bottom left, this whole luminosity is coming from that. That was all his finding working with that pen. So you see, and then on top there is this portrait of a scorpion. Somewhere he must have seen, he lifted a stone and a scorpion was sleeping over there, what he saw. But this technique and the new pen that he found, with that, I think we need to look at tribal folk art, a little bit differently than market, possessing, buying, describing iconographies, So that was, I think it's extraordinary, that portrait of a scorpion that he did. And here there are 2 birds making love, and then this luminosity making love, the luminosity around it, that. And here there is a painting of creation myth of the community. And here the story is that there was water all over, no earth was left, and then God from his body dirt created a crow, and the crow found a crab. Crow found a crab to go to underworld where to get some clay from. So so crow is seated on, and then he's going and taking him to the underworld, and he brings some clay because there was water everywhere. So he puts the clay over there, and it becomes earth, and it expands and things like that. That myth, he has done many versions of that, but I find it extraordinary the way he is there, and clouds on top, a lot of rain and water all over, and things like that. It is not really deriving from this or that, but so much coming from his own. Next, please. Okay, I know it's late. Responses to power imbalance in the vernacular arts. Now, left side, there are details from Santal scroll. Usually it is a creation song and all that, and the creation myth. Left of that, you see Mahadev is coming to meet the first couple that was created from an egg. So that whole thing is, these are like 5, 6, 7 meters long scrolls, different versions of creation myth. So Mahadev is coming with 2 guards, but because ministers are moving escorted by armed guards, so Mahadev is no less than a minister. So, they see that, and then they started to put those 2 guards with rifles and things like that. And below that, then Mahadev arrives to meet the first couple in that one. And here, then, this is the end of the scroll. In between, the whole story is there. And here, this always ends with hell punishments and things like that. And therefore, Bengal scrolls are also called jam pots, Yamapat. Sanskrit, 7th century reference, and also in Banabhatta, reference to Yamapattika. There are several references to the word Yamapattika. The Pattika is the scroll, and Yamapattika, always at the end, they're showing hell punishments. So somehow in Bengal it is called jam pot. Jam pot, so some connection is there. But anyway, so Chitragupta is writing down who has done what kind of sins, etc. So that is purely a Santal scroll. Right side here you see how a man is falling at the feet of policemen and the exploitation of the tribal. I have at least 20 such scrolls and images, independent images, where they constantly depict their fear of the police and atrocities of the police. When we talk about folk and tribal art, we never bring this because nobody would buy it, perhaps. Everyone wants beautiful things. Okay, have beautiful things, but have a look at this also. So there are many scrolls of this kind. And I always now remember when I was reading many years ago, the Naxal movement and things like that. Please don't misunderstand. I'm not trying to justify or not justify. That's not a question. But I think I read in that the kind of atrocities that were being done. And that I see the reflection in these scrolls. So that man is falling at the feet of the policeman and all. Or here there was a girl called Pavitra Prajapati. She came from Pottercast, and she learned from Sundari Bai clay relief work. And then she depicted this also because she never came to Delhi. So I went to railway station and she saw policemen and thieves and all that. So she did that. She first time traveled to Delhi, so railway was, and then the locomotive is in the form of a truck engine, because she'd never seen a locomotive, never traveled with. So this again the policemen. So there are numerous examples. We all ignored them, and only we take the beautiful things for our decoration at home. But I think we need to look at next, please. Yeah. Now, the topic is responses to power imbalance in the vernacular arts. The exploitation. This we were already talking about police and things like that. Now, Saraikela Chow performances of a play called Prisoner's Dream. Now it's very interesting that in Saraikela for years and years, at least 20 years or more, they have annual Saraikela dance festival. So this is Chow, So Chow dance festival they have. In that they usually have their local Mahabharata, Ramayana thing with Chow mask and things like that. Interesting that in a particular year, they did last day, the 5 days festival, last day they did a play which reflected the police atrocities and landlords exploiting the farmer, taking away their land, and things like that began. And that play, Prisoner's Dream, was performed on the last day of the 5-day festival. And I will show you a clip of 1.5 minutes. Can you please show the clip? The landlord. This is that prisoner whom he got imprisoned by so the landlord recedes into background. This is Chow dance idiom, mask and thing. Labor. He dreams that his family comes to meet him. Goes mad. Okay, this is a 10-minute film I have, from which I have sections I have edited, and and last one page, mediagenic echoes in the vernacular art, like media and they see media and how what does media do. Next, please. Yeah. Now, left side are details from a scroll in Bengal, from Bengal, coming of cinema to Bengal and its, into inverted commas, evil effect on the society as such, how it broke families and things like that. So left side, you see there's you see two spools over, and film is being shown, but he could not show under those two curtains. The screen should be, so on the right side the performance, left side the audience is there. Then below that, they say that when cinema came to Bengal, the elderly, the ill, all of them rushed to see cinema, and therefore that is showing all of them coming there. Then buying ticket. Some people say that it is a judge to whom they went, that the families were breaking down, but there were two different versions sung by Patua to me, which I recorded. And then the last one shows that the father-in-law gets very angry because the daughter-in-law will go to see the last show and come back, last show of cinema and come back, and he will shout at her, and then she would be very angry, and then father-in-law falls at the feet of the daughter-in-law and says, "You are Mahasati, Durga, Devi, whatever, I'm sorry." He falls at her feet and all, and how the families were breaking with the coming of cinema. So that was amazing. That 1949, this scroll, dated, painted, it's in Crafts Museum collection, but already that time, response to cinema, its effect on society and thing, and perhaps also that what the Patua was doing was also audio-visual. So it was cutting into his own profession and thing. Then below here is a painting by Karam Patua. That is, the family is watching 9/11 on the television. I like the fan on top, and the Kali next to, and 2 Bengal terracottas in middle class houses, decoration, and then the curtains and thing very, very wonderfully. And then, so 9/11 for breakfast. News doesn't interest women, it's men's area, so she's not looking at that and thing. But I think it's one of his early Kalampatu work, which I like very much. And then on the right side, Madhu Chitrakar's tsunami that happened in Bengal, in Orissa, Bengal also, in 2005. And here the tsunami is shown in the interstices of the 2 snakes and all. And right side, the media people have come to record the tragedy, So I'll end here. There were a couple of things, but next, please. Okay. So as you would have observed, the vernacular arts of India have not remained cloistered in the anthropological archives, but have had entwined histories right up to modern times. The modern intentionality in the work of the vernacular artist resides in the self-conscious and reflexive representation of their own predicament and their own subjectivity in the modern world. Thank you. Question? I don't mind a couple of questions, but I'm a bit tired, but sure.
So I have a question.
Sit here.
Sit down. I think sit down.
Yeah.
You want to ask a question?
Just a quick one. Thank you, sir.
Question.
Hello. Thank you, sir, for your lecture. My only question is, when you mentioned that citizens of the earth, why did you say it was controversial? The exhibition had music, the image, आपने उसको controversial कहा था.
Yeah.
Just was that's it.
So much is written about that exhibition because that was. Yeah. So much critical is written about that exhibition for various reasons. First of all, artists as magicians. So this was also a question that, what does it mean, magician, So that was one. Then the issues of modernity and contemporaneity, which I said in the beginning, that is a separate issue. But there were these issues raised. And then there was also a question of when the contemporary folk and tribal artists from all over the world were shown, the modern artists from the third world particularly were objecting to saying that modernity as such of other countries, third world, was kept aside and celebration was being done. So the questions were asked, why modernity of other countries, African countries, India, Southeast Asia, why that modernity did not get recognized and why third world is always represented in brief. So much is written. I think there was that journal.
Third text.
Third text. So the journal Third Text whole issue was dedicated to criticism of magicians de la terre or magicians of the earth. There are more, but I'll leave it. It's already long. Yes.
Thank you for this very illustrious lecture. I was curious to know that you mentioned about the introduction of paper and how it mediated the whole thing. But I was curious to understand, before that they were also painting on the walls, which is also a kind of a two-dimensional plane, of course situated in a three-dimensional space. So what was the transition or the difference between what was happening on the wall space and the paper?
I tell you. You see, the walls were reserved only for certain ritual purpose. So you couldn't do anything more than that. You could do only, say, Kobargarh in Madhubani or in Vardi, the room dedicated to. That's also a kind of where marriage was solemnized, in Vardi also. So these were limited to their particular sacred iconography for the purpose where marriage was solemnized and even consummated in some cases. So this iconography could vary a little bit, but not much. It has to confine to that. Whereas paper took away that. Scale also. They never did small things. They never did, and secondly, they could never tell their own story, This space gave them that freedom to do that. And that is how, look what explosion came. And I'm very still interested in that. That's why Jivya is important, not because the market is high, or Ganga Devi or Sita Devi, but they were first generation artists. If you look cumulatively at their work, you will see how the response was different than what is being sold by hundreds in Delhi Art or everywhere, in galleries and things like that. So, there could be.
Thank you.
Yes, the last one. Because he wanted only two, so you are the last one.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insightful
Hold it.
Thank you so much for your insightful lecture. I would just want to ask, as you mentioned, that the works of the first generation artists, be it Jangarh Singh or anybody else, they were different. So what do you would like to comment on the future of the tribal art form? Will they survive? If they will, the originality of the art, will it be great? Or
The future of tribal art and things like that. Yeah, as I already said, that it got market. Like Australian tribal art or Aboriginal art, there was, it also has market and money involved and all that, but still there was so much written about, the framework of contemporary modern art framework, they're coming out of their being Aboriginal, the policy with regard to Aboriginal. So many things, so much was done. Whereas here, hardly anything was done with the first generation artists and all. And before that, galleries took over. Take this example, it hurts me that we say gone painting. You show me one example, or maybe you can show me one example perhaps, but you see Gonds and Pradhans don't intermarry. So how is that and Jangarh was a Pradhan artist, and this tradition was started singularly by Jangarh. What happened was that Madhya Pradesh Assembly Building was built by Charles Correa, designed by Charles Correa, the architect. And I remember I used to go to Charles because he designed Craft Museum where I used to work. So wherever Charles did projects, he always invited me to site and we worked together in many. So he told me that I have these huge walls and on that I want some murals done. So he mentioned a couple of modern artists, and so I said, but Madhya Pradesh that time, was Chhattisgarh was not separated. So he said, I would like, so I said, why don't you also take tribal artists to do it, So he said, okay, let's do one modern artist and one tribal artist. Then a committee was made by two people, and of course the Chief Secretary, Mr. Emin.
Emin Bush was Secretary Urban Affairs.
Urban Affairs. The urban building was to be.
Yeah.
So Emin Bush was an IS officer, and he said that there would be a committee of two people, Manjeet Bawa, and I said, please don't misunderstand that I'm trying to malign Manjeet Bawa or something. But we two were, and money available was huge. That time 25 lakhs to an artist. So Manjeet said that he would do the mural. So Emin Bush said that it would be wrong for you to be on the committee and take the commission. So Manjit resigned, but that was only a ploy. So then people said that you are one-man committee and you decide. So by that time I had known Jangarh's work and I'd known Jangarh. So I said we will have Jangarh to do murals, and modern I took Ghulam Muhammad Sheikh, whose huge mural is there now. So Jangarh was asked to do this, but he never worked on such a large space. So he said that can I get some of my friends from the village to come and help me. Now Jangarh had by that time his own personal column, as I said. So he got this. So all the artists, I repeat, who are now known as gone artists, each and every and later generation also, they all came to help him, and it was first time they got exposure, and what we call gone art today was created that time. This is history. If somebody wants to question it, I'm ready to deal with our facts on that. So then these artists also began to do work, and that is how this whole gone school thing came up. And today, I'm not saying that what they are doing is all, I'm not looking at original or this or that, but a lot of it is lifeless too. Because, the market, as I said, took over. So every gallery is commissioning a lot of work with them. Anyway.
Well, that puts an end to the questions. We are very grateful for a brilliant lecture which reveals to us many aspects and many anxieties and many directions and many materials that came to the folk and tribal artists. And they could, as I said in the beginning, there couldn't have been a better inaugural lecture than the one we have just heard. So thank you very much. May I present you with the... And thanks a lot to all of you for being there.